I never thought I'd be the kind of person who'd fall for someone like Mason. I grew up in the suburbs, went to college for business management, and took over my grandfather's ranch in Montana as more of a real estate investment than anything else. I was 28, freshly divorced from a marriage that had felt wrong from the start, and looking for something different, something real. The ranch seemed like a good escape from the life I'd built in Seattle, even though I knew absolutely nothing about running one. That's where Mason came in. He showed up on a cold October morning, driving a beat-up Ford truck that had seen better decades. He was 26, tall and lean, with sun-weathered skin and hands that looked like they'd done actual work, not the kind of work I did pushing papers and attending meetings. He wore a flannel shirt with the sleeves rolled up despite the chill, and when he shook my hand, his grip was firm and calloused. His eyes were this striking gray blue, like the sky right before a storm. I hired him on the spot. I needed someone who actually knew what they were doing, and Mason had grown up on a ranch just like this one. His family had lost theirs during the recession, and he'd been working as a hired hand ever since, moving from place to place. There was something about the way he talked about the land, about the animals, that made me feel like maybe I'd made the right decision buying this place after all. The first few weeks were awkward. I was clearly the boss who didn't know what he was doing, and Mason was patient in a way that probably required supernatural levels of self-control. He'd explain things to me like I was a child, but never in a condescending way. More like a teacher who genuinely wanted me to understand. We'd work side by side, him showing me how to fix fences, how to check on the cattle, how to prepare for winter. I found myself watching him more than I probably should have, noticing the way his shoulders moved when he lifted something heavy, the way he'd push his dark hair back from his forehead when he was concentrating. I told myself it was just admiration. He was good at what he did, and I was learning from him. That's all it was. But then there were these moments, small things that I couldn't quite explain away, like when we'd be working in the barn and he'd reach past me for a tool, and I'd catch the scent of him, all sweat and hay and something earthy that made my breath catch. Or the way my heart would speed up when I'd hear his truck pulling up the drive in the morning, or how I started making excuses to work near him, even when I had other things I should have been doing. One evening in late November, we were sitting on the porch after a long day. I'd started bringing out 2 beers at the end of the workday, and it had become this unspoken ritual. We'd sit there as the sun went down, not talking much, just existing in the same space. That particular night, Mason was telling me about his younger sister, how she was in college studying veterinary medicine, how proud he was of her. The way his face lit up when he talked about her made something in my chest ache. "You're a good brother," I said, and he looked at me with this expression I couldn't quite read. "I try," he said. "Family's important, you know. Even when things fall apart, they're what matters." "Is that why you keep moving around?" I asked, "to help support her?" He was quiet for a long moment, peeling the label off his beer bottle. "Partly," he said, "and partly because I haven't found a reason to stay anywhere yet." The way he said it, the weight behind those words, made me wonder if he was talking about more than just geography. But I didn't push. I was still figuring out my own feelings, still trying to understand why this man had become the best part of my day. Winter came hard that year. By mid-December, we'd already had 3 major snowstorms, and the forecast kept promising more. Mason had moved into the small cabin on the property that was meant for hired hands. It was closer than driving into town every day, and with the weather getting worse, it made sense. I'd see the light on in his windows at night from the main house, and I'd wonder what he was doing, if he was lonely out there by himself. I was definitely lonely. The main house felt too big, too empty. I'd never lived alone before, going straight from my parents' house to college dorms to living with my ex-wife. The silence at night was deafening. I'd lie in bed and think about Mason in his cabin, probably reading one of those worn paperback westerns he always had in his truck, and I'd want to walk over there and knock on his door, but I never did. What would I even say? The blizzard hit on December 21st, the winter solstice. It started as light snow in the morning, but by noon, the wind had picked up, and visibility was almost zero. Mason and I worked together to make sure the cattle had shelter and extra feed, that the pipes were wrapped, that everything was as secure as we could make it. By 3 in the afternoon, we could barely see 10 feet in front of us. "We should get inside," Mason shouted over the wind. "This is only going to get worse." We made our way back toward the buildings, and I realized I could barely see the cabin anymore. The snow was coming down so thick and fast that it was like being inside a cloud. Mason was heading toward his place, and something made me grab his arm. "You should come to the main house," I yelled. "It's safer, more insulated." He hesitated, and I could see him calculating whether it was worth arguing about. Then he nodded, and we fought our way through the snow to my back door. Inside, we stood in the mudroom, both of us covered in snow, breathing hard. I helped him out of his heavy coat, and our hands brushed. Even through the cold, I felt that spark, that awareness I'd been trying to ignore for weeks. The power went out around 6. We'd been prepared for it, and I had oil lamps and candles set up, a fire going in the fireplace. We made dinner together in the kitchen, heating up soup on the gas stove, moving around each other in a dance that felt natural, comfortable. I kept catching myself looking at him in the flickering lamplight, the way the shadows played across his face. We ate in the living room by the fire, sitting on the floor with our backs against the couch. The wind was howling outside, rattling the windows. The house creaked and groaned. I'd never heard it sound so alive. "This is some storm," Mason said, staring into the fire. "Yeah," I agreed. "I'm glad you're not out in the cabin. I would have worried." He turned to look at me, and there was something in his expression that made my pulse quicken. "Would you have?" "Of course," I said, trying to keep my voice casual. "You're my employee, my responsibility." "Is that what I am?" he asked quietly. "Your employee." The question hung in the air between us, heavy with meaning. I didn't know how to answer it. I didn't know what he wanted me to say or what I wanted to say. "You're my friend," I finally said. "At least, I hope you are." He smiled, and it was warm and genuine. "Yeah," he said. "I am." We stayed up late, talking about everything and nothing. He told me about growing up on his family's ranch, about the day they lost it, about the anger and grief he'd carried for years. I told him about my marriage, about how I'd known from the beginning that something was off, but had convinced myself I could make it work. About how coming out here had been an escape from admitting the truth about myself. "What truth?" he asked softly. I took a deep breath, that I'd spent my whole life trying to be what everyone expected me to be. The good son, the successful businessman, the straight husband, and none of it ever felt right. None of it ever felt like me. "And now," he prompted, "now I'm trying to figure out who I actually am, what I actually want." Mason was quiet, watching me with those storm-colored eyes. "And what do you want, Adrian?" The way he said my name, low and careful, made my heart hammer in my chest. I wanted to be honest. I wanted to be brave, but I was terrified. "I don't know," I lied. He nodded slowly, like he could see right through me but wasn't going to push. "Okay," he said. We went to bed around midnight. I set Mason up in the guest room, giving him extra blankets. The temperature was dropping fast, and even with the fire going, I could feel the cold seeping into the house. I lay in my own bed, listening to the storm, thinking about Mason just down the hall, thinking about the way he'd looked at me when he asked what I wanted, thinking about how badly I wanted to tell him the truth. I woke up shivering around 3 in the morning. The house was freezing. I got up and checked the fire, added more wood, but it barely made a dent. The wind was still screaming outside, and when I looked at the thermometer, it read 42 degrees inside the house. This was dangerous. I went to check on Mason and found him awake, huddled under every blanket I'd given him, his breath visible in the air. "This is bad," I said. "The fire's not enough. It's too cold." He nodded, his teeth chattering slightly. "We need to conserve heat. Stay in one room close to the fire." We dragged blankets and pillows into the living room, building a nest on the floor right in front of the fireplace. I added more wood to the fire, stoking it as high as I dared. We lay down next to each other, wrapped in separate blankets, and I could still feel him shivering. "This isn't working," Mason said after a few minutes. "We're losing too much heat." "What do you suggest?" I asked. He was quiet for a moment. "Body heat," he finally said. "It's the most efficient way to stay warm. We should share blankets. Share heat." My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. Okay, I said, trying to sound practical, like this was just a survival tactic and nothing more. We rearranged the blankets, creating one large cocoon. Mason moved closer, and I could feel the heat radiating off him, even through our clothes. He hesitated, then said, "We should probably take off some layers." Sounds counterintuitive, but wet clothes from sweat will make us colder, and direct skin contact transfers heat better. He was right. I knew he was right, but the thought of being that close to him, of feeling his skin against mine, made me dizzy. We stripped down to our underwear, moving quickly in the cold, then dove back under the blankets. Mason pressed against my back, and I felt his arm come around my waist, pulling me close. Every point of contact between us felt electric. His chest against my back, his legs tangled with mine, his breath warm against my neck. "Is this okay?" he asked quietly. "Yeah," I managed to say. "It's okay." We lay there in silence, and gradually I stopped shivering. His warmth seeped into me, and I became aware of every inch of him touching me, his heartbeat against my back, the rise and fall of his breathing, the weight of his arm around me, holding me close. "Adrian," he said softly, "can I tell you something?" "What?" I whispered. "I didn't take this job just because you were offering good pay. I took it because when I shook your hand that first day, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, and I kept telling myself it was nothing, that I was imagining it. But every day I'm here, every moment I spend with you, it gets harder to pretend." My breath caught. "Mason," I started, but I didn't know how to finish. "You asked me what I want," he continued, "earlier tonight, and I wasn't brave enough to tell you the truth. But right now, lying here with you, I think I need to be honest. I want to stay. Not just for the winter, not just for the job. I want to stay because of you." I turned in his arms, and suddenly we were face to face in the dim firelight. His eyes searched mine, vulnerable and hopeful and scared. "I want you to stay too," I said. "I've wanted to tell you for weeks now, but I didn't know how. I didn't know if you'd feel the same way. I didn't know if I was brave enough to say it out loud." "Say what out loud?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "That I'm falling for you, that you've become the reason I look forward to every day, that when I think about the future, about this place, I can't imagine it without you in it." His hand came up to cut my face, his thumb brushing across my cheekbone. "Can I kiss you?" he asked. "Please," I breathed. When his lips met mine, it felt like coming home. Like every confused, uncertain step I'd taken in my life had been leading me to this moment, to this man, to this feeling of absolute rightness. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, both of us learning the shape of each other. Then it deepened, became more urgent, more real. His fingers threaded through my hair, and I pulled him closer, wanting to eliminate every inch of space between us. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. He pressed his forehead against mine, and I could feel him smiling. "I've wanted to do that since the day I met you," he said. "Why didn't you?" "Because you were my boss. Because I didn't know if you were interested in men. Because I was scared of losing this, of losing you, even as a friend." "I understand that fear," I said. "I've been carrying it too." "We don't have to be scared anymore," he said. "Not of this, not of each other." We spent the rest of the night wrapped around each other, talking and kissing and discovering this new territory between us. He told me about the first time he realized he was attracted to men, about the struggle of growing up in a conservative ranching community, about the relationships he'd had and lost. I told him about the years of denial, about the marriage that should never have happened, about the relief and terror of finally accepting myself. As the first gray light of dawn started to filter through the windows, the storm finally began to ease. We were still tangled together under the blankets, and I couldn't remember ever feeling this content, this safe. "So, what happens now?" I asked. "Well," Mason said, running his fingers through my hair, "I think you're stuck with me. If you want me, that is. Not just as a hired hand, but as whatever this is, whatever we're becoming." "I want you," I said firmly, "in every way, for as long as you'll have me." He kissed me again, slow and sweet. "Then I guess you're stuck with me for a very long time," he said. The power came back on around noon, and we spent the day digging out from the storm, checking on the animals, making sure everything had survived. But everything felt different now. Better. When we worked side by side, our hands would brush and we'd share secret smiles. When we came back inside, covered in snow, he'd pull me close and kiss me, and it felt like the most natural thing in the world. That night, we had dinner together at the kitchen table, and I reached across to take his hand. "Move into the main house," I said. "Don't go back to the cabin. Stay here with me." "Are you sure?" he asked. "We've only just started this. What if it's too fast? I've spent my whole life moving too slow, being too cautious," I said. "I don't want to do that anymore. I know what I feel, I know what I want, and I want you here, with me, every day." He squeezed my hand, his eyes bright. "Okay," he said. "Yes, I'll stay." It's been 3 years since that blizzard, since the night Mason offered to share body heat, and we found something neither of us had been looking for. He's not my hired hand anymore. He's my partner in every sense of the word. We run the ranch together, and it's become more successful than I ever imagined it could be. His sister visits every summer, and she's told me more than once that she's never seen her brother this happy. I've never been this happy either. Every morning I wake up next to him, and it still feels like a gift. Every evening we sit on the porch with our beers, watching the sun set over the mountains, and I'm grateful for the storm that brought us together, for the cold that made us brave enough to reach for warmth and found love instead. Sometimes I think about the man I was before I came here, before I met Mason, the man who was lost and lonely and pretending to be someone he wasn't. I barely recognize him now. Mason helped me become the person I was always meant to be, and I like to think I did the same for him. Last winter, when the first big storm of the season hit, we were prepared. We had plenty of supplies, backup generators, everything we needed. But when the power went out and the temperature dropped, Mason grinned at me across the living room and said, "Guess we'll have to share body heat again." I pulled him close, kissing him in the firelight, and said, "I guess we will, for the rest of our lives." And that's exactly what we're doing, building a life together on this ranch, facing every storm side by side, keeping each other warm through the coldest nights. It's not always easy. We argue about the best way to run things, about whose turn it is to fix the fence in the north pasture, about whether we should expand the herd. But at the end of every day, we come back to each other. We choose each other. That's what love is, I've learned. It's not some grand dramatic gesture. It's the small choices you make every day. It's offering to share your warmth when someone is cold. It's being brave enough to tell the truth about what you want. It's finding someone who sees you, really sees you, and choosing to stay. Mason was that person for me, and I hope I'm that person for him. I know I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be.